Hello, and welcome to Oakville Matters. Thanks to Oakville's and Burlington's Cogeco Cable, this is our opportunity to talk about the things that matter to Oakville. Today, we're talking about racism, and that is a problem not only in Oakville, but in the rest of Halton. And joining us today to talk about it and deal with it is Regional Counselor from Burlington, Lisa Kearns, who, with me, sponsored a motion at the last Regional Council meeting to support two Oakville students who've been bringing this matter forward. And also joining us today is Oakville Town and Regional Councilor Pavan Parmer from Ward 7 and the students in question. And Tyler Henry and Alexis Graham are with us today. And Tyler and Alexis, let's start off with you. Um, uh, the part of your story that I think people most need to know is that when you found racist graffiti and stuff at your school, it put you in mind to take action because you'd endured racism throughout your 4 years at school, but you did a really unique thing. You reached out to every other high school in Halton and you discovered that it's everywhere. And then Lisa and I, we received your information and here we are today with Pavan Parmer to try to move this rock further up the hill and fight racism, increase equity and inclusion in our community. So tell us about what you found when you reached out to the other schools. That was what really rocked all of us.
So essentially when this all happened, Tyler and I kind of, alongside a lot of kids at our school, we were all very horrified because sadly to say, none of us found it as a surprise that these incidents would escalate to this level. So with this, Tyler and I decided that we kind of had to speak out about it because nobody at our school does. And it's quite a scary thing to do. So Tyler and I actually put out a Google form and we let kids from all over Halton send in some of the stories that they've experienced, some of the things that they've heard around them within their schools. And the results were, lack of a better words, like horrifying. So Tyler, did you want to read some?
Yeah, we actually had some people who sent in joke responses, which I feel like kind of reflects what a lot of people think at our school and what the administration kind of reflects as well, because it's not taken seriously. And a lot of the responses talked about incidents that happen right in front of administration and they do nothing about it. Some of them even talked about things that the teachers had said to them. So I can read some of the ones we have. Like, I am Arabic with a Muslim family and a boy once asked if I speak Taristani. We had someone talk about how one student went around and showed KKK videos to students of color specifically. We had a Colombian student have students ask him if his uncle can supply them with drugs. Just things like that. A lot of racial stereotyping and just disgusting comments. And it was really upsetting to read all of them and how they happened within school. And even though they're brought up to administration, they weren't taken seriously.
Well, I mean, I think I'd like to hop in. Well, first of all, thank you, Tyler and Alexis, for championing this and representing your peers here today in this very important conversation. And thank you to my colleagues, Councillor Lisa Kearns and Mayor Burden, for bringing forward that very important motion at the Halton region. I was happy to support it. One of the things I wanted to mention to you, Tyler and Alexis, I actually took a look at your Instagram handle, and maybe we can have that propped up on the screen so our residents can follow you as well. But I thought that I'm assuming that those that form that you put out to all of the students gave kids an opportunity to really share their experiences, and now you're showcasing it and you're really putting it out there. And it's difficult to read and it's a difficult conversation to have, but it needs to be had. So have you heard any feedback from students or your peers on, being able to finally share these experiences, and what is the reaction you're getting to this, movement that you've started on social media?
People seem really excited by what we're doing. We've had some people DM us asking how they can help out because everyone wants to be involved because we all know this is an issue and people want to help find a solution to it. We've had people comment that they're so excited and they're proud of us for what we've done and they're happy that this issue is getting attention because it deserves attention because a solution has to be found.
I think that's an excellent place to start this journey because I firmly believe that in order for us to break down all elements of racism, it has to start with education and it has to start with sharing. And by creating a space for those voices to be heard, and then really through the region, what we did was we really legitimized the platform and we really cemented it as a place for that open conversation. And as we sat there as regional counselors responsible for creating the type of inclusive communities that we strive to create, and to hear those stories was an incredibly solemn moment. And I think we all took stock and reflected on our roles, and you know, you taught us something that day. You taught us how to listen and to know what's happening. And one of the greatest things that I took from that was, if this is happening in our schools and it's incubating there, how is it maturing in our communities where the people who are engaging in this behavior have even more power, a larger voice, more tools of harm at their disposal? And how do we stop that before it becomes something that we can no longer control? And we have seen through our Halton Regional Police, you know, the incidences of hate crimes are on the rise by, I think, I don't recall the number, but it's highest it's ever been right now in our community. So if this is not a pressing topic, I can't imagine what is. And I know Councillor Palmer will want to speak to us about the effects on our mental health of our youth, you know, because it has a direct relation there as well. And you really opened up a conversation that needed to be had in an authentic way that none of us could ever have done without your support and without your voices coming to the forefront.
Yeah, you know, the point of the regional resolution was to endorse your proposals that you came up with to deal with the problem. And it might be a good idea if you want to explain those now.
Yeah. So basically, Tyler and I created 3 proposals for school boards to deal with racism because we found that in the past, especially from a personal experience, that nothing is done except for a phone call. And we find that a phone call isn't really like a phone call home. And we find that it doesn't work because parents can easily be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I can't believe my kid is doing this, and leave it at that. We don't know how the parents feel about the situation. We don't know if like the student's actions came from home. So we created 3 proposals to deal with these. And then I could say 2 of our proposals, to put it plainly, it's kind of disappointing that Tyler and I had to include these because these are things that the school should already be doing. So our first proposal was for schools to actually enforce procedures and protocols that they already have in place. We put this in because Tyler and I noticed that the school boards are in our school, they like to throw around the word zero tolerance policy. And Tyler and I found that it kind of acts as a shield to everything that happens. They just kind of want to say, oh, but we have a zero tolerance policy, and leave it at that. So that was our first proposal. And then our last proposal was accountability for online racism, because Tyler and I, like, a lot of the incidents of racism do happen online, and schools talk about bullying and all forms of bullying, and cyberbullying is included in that. So we do believe that accountability for racism that happens online, it needs to happen in real life as well. And Tyler, did you want to talk about the second?
I just wanted to ask you a question there. I don't have school age children, so I was curious when I was thinking about this, and the fact that, you know, racism has now trickled online and there's bullying online. Is it easier to capture now? I mean, are you able to take, if someone wrote something inappropriate in a chat, are you able to take a screenshot of that? I'm assuming you could take a picture with your phone, of course, but how is that really handled?
100%. So, on a personal note, in the delegation, I noted that I had endured racism and that type of harassment since ninth grade. And with that, because we only have 5 minutes, I can't really get into the specifics of it. But since ninth grade, I had been taking screenshots and kind of keeping posts that I've seen racism on, or group chats that people were saying the N-word at me. I mentioned the death threat that I got for speaking out against the vandalism at White Oaks, and I did keep screenshots of that. And I did send them to the principal. And I think Tyler and I included the accountability for online racism proposal because when I did send it to the principal, not a lot happened. So yes, to answer your question, it is kind of captured and saved when we see it.
Plus, there's the issue of people making fake accounts specifically to send hateful messages. So although there is a way to track where those messages are from, it's more difficult because you have to get the police involved. You have the type of technology to trace back to their location and stuff like that. But it's easier to capture because you have like undeniable evidence of it happening, but it becomes more difficult when the person is really dedicated to saying those kinds of things because they'll try to make themselves anonymous in any way that they can.
Yeah. I mean, racial issues are particularly important in education because schools and teachers play, I think, a significant role in children's socialization. But to your point, Councilor Kearns, I also think and believe this just is not a Halton District School Board problem. This is everyone's problem. And, you know, it really starts at home and having the important conversations with your children and making sure they understand what racism is. And, you know, I think we can all do better and we can all do more. And the two of you have certainly taken a step in a great direction, you know, in the right direction to make that happen. So, you know, I'm really proud of you too.
I do worry I do worry that at home there might be parents leading their children in this direction rather than trying to restrain them. I worry about that.
Well, that's why public areas are the interceptors where we can be the deciders of what is right and wrong. The school administrators, the counselors, you know, people in leadership roles amongst the community, they will hopefully be able to take that education at home and meet it with that's wrong and here's the harm that it does and here are the consequences and here are the lasting effects. Please be more conscious of your actions. And I think once that becomes, you know, the real zero tolerance, we don't accept it in our community. We investigate it. We charge people. We make sure that becomes a deterrent and that it is not allowed in our community. And Burlington has not been immune to the effects of racism either. We've had anti-Semitism posters put on City Hall itself. So we know that there are people in our own community that are engaging in that behavior, and we will stand up against them. So even if those individuals have learned that in a different environment, once they arrive in ours where we can have some influence and some control, it will make the message crystal clear that that's not acceptable here, and you must cease and desist immediately and don't ever do it again. Because we will continue to take out every action that we can to stomp out racism. It's unacceptable here in all shapes and forms, be it verbal, physical, with signs, with online presence. We have really strict social media controls on the City of Burlington's website, as well as all of the councilors, where if a racist comment is made, it's immediately deleted. And we'll stand up for that. You know, that's not called stifling public opinion. That's called, there's just no place here for that. So even if you have learned it somewhere else, this is where you unlearn it, and we will give you the tools to help you unlearn it. And we know that education on anti-racism and the toolboxes to become stronger allies continues to grow every single day. So
sorry.
That's okay. It's just like life. And
Oh gosh.
everybody's used to it, so don't worry about it. Tyler, Alexis told us the first and third proposals, and you were going to tell us the second one.
Yes, so specifically with what we were saying about people learning this at home, people not having these types of conversations with their kids is why we developed this proposal, because a phone call home hasn't been effective. We haven't noticed any change in behavior after that. And we specifically know of some students who have parents who have told them that if they knew that their friends were Black, they wouldn't be allowed to be friends with them, which was really upsetting to hear. So with this proposal, we thought that students who have had a prior offense of harassing somebody because of their race or ethnicity should be given a racial sensitivity learning, where they learn about the group that they offended, where they learn about their culture, their history, and specifically speak about the comment they made and why that was inappropriate or offensive, because we think that just telling somebody that something is wrong doesn't get the point across as much as educating them about the topic. And that's when we think that any ignorance they have towards it can really just dissipate or completely go away. So we think that's the best way to go about it, because currently what we have in place hasn't made any change or impact in people's behavior and how they treat one another.
All
I
right,
think
well,
that's a really good idea, because you see that a lot in corporations as well. If there is an offense in your place of work, you're often required to take sensitivity training on that particular offense. So I think that's
And back to the learning point, Pav, and in corporations. So I sit on a couple of boards that have taken a stand as one of the actions that have come out of Black Lives Matter. They have taken a stand and made an anti-racism statement on their board. And I can say Joseph Grant Hospital, Burlington Downtown Business Association, and then they've backed it up with action. And I think that we're in the time right now where backing everything up with action is really what counts. So in those circumstances, we've had training sessions, webinars, diversity and inclusion roundtables, and really creating that new conversation at that level that can cascade out through the community. It's not just enough to say, I'm anti-racist. It's, what other actions are you taking to make sure that that message is out there in our community? And so that is a really optimistic sign. I think that's a big change, a big social shift, where, like Pavan said, corporations don't give you a second chance. But at the same time, they're also now investing in how to create truly inclusive environments. And I think that's going to help as generations come up and through to really get to that place where I know we all want to be.
Well, I recently heard, actually just this morning, from Zumira Zaberi, who is the coordinator of Halton's Diversity and Inclusion Roundtable. And she's offered to join us in this work. And so I hope to get all of this work headed up to the Halton Diversity and Inclusion Roundtable, which is something that the region of Halton created about 7 or 8 years ago, and that we fund to try to be a weapon against this kind of bad behavior. And my office has just hired a summer intern, a student. He's a master's in public policy and administration, MPPA, at a university downtown. And he's working with my office to develop an EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion policy update for the town. And I hired him before Alexis and Tyler came along, and you've made me want to sort of enlarge the assignment that I gave him. I'm sensitive that I really should only be doing this for Oakville, and possibly, with a suggestion for Halton, because I'm a Halton counselor. And I'm a little bit out of my lane when I say, and it looks to me like the school board could use a little help. Like this morning, I read their policy, their accountability policy, and there's like no accountability in their accountability policy. There's no, you two made an amazing point last week at council when you said that Well, you tell the story. The difference between their racism policy, their bullying and racism policy, and their dress code policy.
Yeah, in our student handbook, there is a long section about dress code, specifically what is within code, what's out of code, the consequences for not following code, and then in a section that's less than half the length speaks about harassment. It's the only section that mentions harassment, and it doesn't condemn harassment in any way. It doesn't say that it's wrong, and it doesn't say that any students will be reprimanded for those kind of actions. It just says this is what harassment is, and that's pretty much it.
It doesn't even say, and there's consequences?
Nope, not at all.
Not at all. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, I can fully say here with confidence that it essentially just says, this is racism. Next.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
full
It says that they want to create an environment where everyone feels included, but it doesn't say anything about those who threaten that environment or how they plan on maintaining that environment.
I also took a look at the accountability plan this morning. And, you know, I do note that there is sections in there for ongoing review and changes to be made to that plan. So I think that you two have found a platform and a voice for many students. And I think that, you know, Halton District School Board will take the appropriate actions and work with you to implement that into their accountability plan. Over the weekend, I had a small chat with my nephew. He's in grade 7, and I talked to him about racism, and I said, hey, are you seeing anything like that online in your chat groups? You know, just trying to get a feel for if he's experienced it, if he's seen it. And he said to me, I haven't seen anything lately. He goes, but we do talk about it a lot. So I understood from him that there are teachers, it is in the curriculum. They are having these conversations, at least in elementary school. I'm not sure what that looks like in high school, and maybe that sensitivity training that you were talking about, maybe that needs to be a part of the high school curriculum now, just going forward. But, you know, I'll leave that to the experts. But, you know, there is, you know, everybody is doing their part, and is, you know, like I said before, more can be done on everyone's part. And I just did want to also touch briefly on the mental health aspect of it. And, you know, now, especially during COVID-19, the pandemic has had a major effect on our lives. And many of us are facing challenges that can be stressful, overwhelming, and causing strong emotions in adults and children. And one thing I want to say about racism too, is we talked about consequences and outcomes, but there's really a long-term, lifelong mental effect of dealing with racism. And that's where I really feel for you guys. And, you know, I don't forget instances of racism. You won't forget that graffiti. That's going to be something that lasts with you for a lifetime. So I do want to encourage students, and I'll help however I can. I know my colleagues will, with roundtables, to provide support, to provide those conversations to anybody who's having a hard time struggling with these feelings of unacceptance and these feelings that, you know, might be generated from these types of negative experiences. So that's something I hope to work with both of you on, and I invite my colleagues also to join me.
Absolutely. I think this is one of those issues that has no end until we achieve that full, true, welcoming and inclusive community. There is no end. Our work must be relentless, because the forces of racism are relentless, and they somehow find way more tools than we have to, you know, exploit every nook and cranny, whether it's a shove in the hallway and a whispered slur, or, you know, it's a little slip of paper slipped in a locker. There's no end to the creative ways in which people who wish to engage in racist behavior will find to hurt and exploit others for no reason other than just the way that they were born. And that is exactly what we are standing up against, because it has no place here. So this work will have to continue relentlessly until we achieve that truly equitable environment, until we achieve parity, until we achieve, you know, welcoming and inclusivity. And we have to keep putting more and more resources against it. Like, we're just at the point where we're opening up really raw and powerful conversations and understanding how all of these behaviors have those hurtful pieces that touch every part of a person's life, from mental health, future employment, future family upbringing. These are all things that have to change. And to Pavin's point, we're committed to being part of that change, but we can't do it we have to do it over and over different generations, because it has to go back and then it has to come forward. So when we have different ages who experience different types of racism, I think one of the comments from one of the counselors was, I can't believe, I'm having this conversation in council today when I experienced the same thing, or I observed it when I was in school, which could have been decades ago. And the fact that we're still working on this shows us how those malicious forces that are engaging in racist behavior haven't let up. And so now we need to really double down and say, that's it. We got to find a stopping point. We need major consequences to make this end. We can't keep doing this in cycle after cycle after cycle, because the harm is just far too much when you pile on everything else that's going on in the world. So being part of that change and continuing to strengthen allyship, I think, is the way forward, and through education, of course. So you've given us that incredible education on this, Alexis and Tyler. We're grateful to you for bringing this forward.
Well, I want to thank you all for this conversation today. We've about run out of time. The thing that sticks with me about this is how eternal racism seems to be. There is a saying that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And so it may be that to be free of racism, we have to be eternally alert. We certainly have to have people willing, when you see something, to say something. And Tyler and Alexis, you are the champs there. I hope you'll continue to work on this. I know that Councillor Lisa and Councillor Pav and I will work with you in solidarity. And I want to thank you for watching. I want to encourage you to spread the word that racism is in our community and we need to root it out. And we'll see you next time.